A very exciting afternoon to all of you. Welcome to the webinar session on Authentic Leadership, the case of building the Starbucks community. I'm Link Sufansha from eLearning Edge, and we will be moderating and managing this online session together with my colleagues James Felizardo, Twinkle Serrano, and Grace Montiel. Before we give a brief introduction about the organizers and speaker, my colleague Twinkle Serrano will be giving you a quick walkthrough of the webinar tool for the benefit, of course, of those who were not able to have a technical test yesterday. Okay? So, here you go, Twinkle.
Hi everyone. So yesterday we had our tech test. So this is for those who are not able to had a tech test with us yesterday. So I'll be showing you a brief walkthrough of the GoToWebinar tool. And to start, this is your viewer and your control panel. As you can see at the left panel is a presentation of our speaker. And at the right is our control panel, which you can use to interact with us, your organizers, and the other attendees as well. So to elaborate on your control panel, at the upper left is an orange rectangle. This is used to maximize or minimize the control panel. And the blue rectangle is used to set your full screen mode. And at any point during the webinar, you can use this icon to raise your hand. So guys, can you try clicking on the hand icon? Alright, so you can use that icon if you're experiencing technical difficulties or if you have a question for the speaker. So the green icon below the hand is your mic status. You should have your speakers and microphone enabled, but we usually set all participants in mute mode or listen-only mode while the speaker is talking. So you can use a chat box if you have a question or if you want to send a message to the organizers. So it's very important, guys, that you have a working mic. Otherwise, you can just use the chat box. So type in your questions in the chat box later. And to tweak your audio, click the audio setup link and another window will appear where you can select and set up the type of mic you're using by clicking on the drop-down menu. And that goes the same for the speaker setup also. To make sure that your mic is working, the bars beside the mic icon should have green lights going back and forth once you start talking. So for Mac users, just check the screenshot and choose the type of mic you're using. So to test your speakers, click the play sound button and you should hear a sound. You can adjust the volume level by dragging the lever. And together with Grace Montiel, my co-facilitator, we are just here in the background to assist you. And please be reminded also that this session is dependent on bandwidth connection, so we recommend that you stop downloading, close multiple browser windows, chat windows, or anything that will affect your bandwidth. Also, to test your connection speed, just click File and then click Preferences, click Connection, and then click Test Connection. All right. Next slide, please. All right, so here are our numbers. If in case you encounter any technical difficulties in the middle of the session, just contact me. That's my number 0947-576-1717. And then you can also contact Grace. Her number is 0927-326-2370. You may call us through our landlines 927-0096, 426-6001, locals 5678-5679. So I just have a question. Who here is using an iPhone or iPad? Can I see a show of hands? I don't see any raising of hands, so I guess no one's using an iPhone or an iPad. But just note that you cannot answer to our poll questions later because there will be a pop-up question later on. That's our poll question, and if you are using an iPhone or an iPad, you can answer that through the chat box. So you can just type it in the chat box so we can see your answers. All right, so I will turn you over to links. Thank you very much, guys.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much for those instructions and walkthrough, Twinkle. All right. Moving along, allow me to briefly introduce the organizers of this session. Okay. So eLearning Edge is one of the leaders in online education. Our goal, of course, is to bring world-class education to all parts of the region. Our programs include the Certified Digital Marketer Program, currently running with the Ateneo de Manila University and the La Salle University. We also run programs with leading industry organizations in the country like the Internet and Mobile Marketing Association of the Philippines, Public Relations Society of the Philippines, and of course, People Management Association of the Philippines. Right. Okay, PMAP is strictly a professional, non-stock, not-for-profit organization of over 1,800 member companies and individual management executives engaged or interested in human resource management and industrial relations work. Founded more than 50 years ago, PMAP continued the tradition of its forefathers in advancing the profession, the science, and the art of human resource management. 8. For John Clements Consultants Incorporated, since its inception in 1974, John Clements Consultants Incorporated has grown into one of the largest consulting firms in the Philippines today, with a leadership position in the local market and strengthening the presence in the international scene, notably in Asia, Middle East, and the U.S. While it has grown in the size and business interests locally and internationally, the prospects of further expansion remain in the horizon. The John Clements Consultants Group has maintained its focus on its core competencies, namely recruitment and training. Okay, so to introduce our speaker this afternoon, Tolly Moss is the president of the Magellan Alliance, a U.S.-based consulting firm. He's a skilled management consultant with extensive experience in helping corporations improve their top and bottom line performance. He has over 30 years of consulting experience with major corporations like IBM, DuPont, and Philips NV. Tully graduated with honors from Williams College in Massachusetts and got his MBA from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. And Tully has received training in participatory learning and teaching from the Harvard Business School, and he's also a moderator for Harvard Business Publishing in Massachusetts. Good afternoon, Tully. I'm giving the floor to you and passing on the presentation rights. Here you go. Hi, Tully.
Hi, Lynx. Thanks very much for your kind introduction, and welcome everyone to our afternoon webinar and a discussion of Howard Schultz and how he built community at Starbucks. One thing that will benefit everybody a great deal is the more you participate, the more you are going to learn and the more you will get out of this webinar. And although I understand not everybody received the Harvard Business School case that is the basis of our discussion, I wanted to get a sense as to how many of you have. So I'd like to ask Lynx that you put up our first poll question, and this will give you all an opportunity to take your first crack at participating online. So Lynx, if you could get that poll up, and I'll give all of you about 1 or 2 minutes. It's a simple yes or no answer, so if you could respond as to whether or not you have been able to receive and read the case.
Right, Tally. Right now it's on your screen. Just select the specific answer to this question and your answer will be sent to us right now, the voting is still open. So if you can finish that in 5 seconds more, then we will close the poll and show the answers to everyone. Okay? 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay, I'll be closing this now. I'm sharing the results now, Tali. There you go. If you can see your screen.
Okay. That's helpful background. Thank you all for responding to that poll. Well, all right, let's start talking a bit about Starbucks itself. And you all should soon be seeing a picture of today's subject, Howard Schultz, with the Starbucks logo in the background. And Lynx, if you could put up our second poll question, asking whether or not you've been to a Starbucks recently, that would be helpful.
Okay.
So
I'm
Lynx
launching.
will be putting up. Go ahead, Lynx.
Yes, I'm launching it now, so you can just click the answer again if it's a yes or a no. We can give you 10 seconds more for that. Okay. More answers are coming in. Keep it coming. Yeah, it's a great thing that we can actually see the percentage of people voting, and then when it stops, then I would be able to tell you all that okay, we can now, in 3 seconds, we can now close the poll, and I'll be sharing it now. Here you go, Tali.
Okay.
So we have 86%.
Wow. So I guess, yeah. That's terrific. Maybe that's one of the reasons we've gotten all of you to come here today. You're curious about the background here for the man whose store you go to so frequently. All right, that's great. What I'd like now is to ask you why you go to Starbucks. Got 86% have said they've gone to Starbucks, and I'd like to ask you why you've done that, and if you could raise your hand as to if you'd like to speak. It was explained earlier to you what you had to do to raise your hand, and I'm not seeing anybody raise their hand. So
Yes.
first thing I'm going to do then is to I'm going to offer you a bribe. First person to raise their hand gets a Starbucks coupon, a gift certificate to Starbucks. I have
Okay,
a hand
everyone.
up thus far.
Oh, that's Alvin. Wow. Oh, come on. There are many hands. Okay, Alvin Fuerte. Right, I'll be unmuting your
Alvin,
microphone.
Was Alvin the first? Was Alvin the first, Lynx?
Yes. Hello?
Okay, Alvin, first off, you can privately later send a chat to Lynx with where we'll send your Starbucks gift certificate. But at any rate, you are Lynx. Let's make sure he's up and live, and let's hear from you, Alvin. Why do you go to Starbucks?
All right, Alvin, you can talk. I have already unmuted your microphone. Alvin. All right. Maybe he was interested in the prize, but unfortunately, maybe the microphone is not working.
Listen, Alvin, you have to speak up. Alvin, you have to speak up to get your prize here.
Okay, moving along, there was another one who raised her hand, Myra Rondina. I'm unmuting your microphone now. Hello, Myra.
Can you tell us why you go to Starbucks?
Sorry. Myra? Myra? Hello, Myra. Can you guys hear? Can you guys hear? Okay. Seems to me we're still not successful with Myra, and we can try with Tony Rose Sena. Tony, if you can talk.
Hi.
Hi, Tony. Tali,
Hello.
we have a winner.
Yeah, can you hear
Tali.
me?
Yes, loud and clear, Tony.
Okay, great.
Hi, good afternoon. Actually, it's more of the customer service that they provide to us. The people that working for Starbucks is really nice people that they treat you when you visit the store, and it's the service itself, aside from the product.
Okay, great, Tony. So you really like the service and you like the way you are treated when you go to Starbucks.
Yes, sir. It's more of the people and how they were trained to, of course, assist the customers.
Okay. Is there anything in particular that you like about the way they treat you?
Actually, it's the total commitment to serve the people. Like for example, they would personally get your names. If you will be ordering, they will be offering also products that you might want to of course try as well. And the ambience, it's really the full customer service.
Okay, that's great. That's great. So you like the fact that they remember your name and then
Yes.
if you're okay, that's good. All right, Lynx, do we have anyone else who might have a response here?
Right. Okay, I'm moving on to with Noel Antinas sorry, I cannot pronounce his name. Noel, I'm unmuting your mic. Noel Antipas Elgin Colin. Hi, Noel. I
Hi,
have unmuted
good,
your mic. Wow. Hi,
hi,
good afternoon.
good afternoon.
Okay, can you
Hello.
give us your answer to Tali's question?
Yes, well, I actually like the ambiance of Starbucks first and foremost, and at the same time, the great customer orientation of each and every employee.
How about that, Tali?
Okay. Oh, that's great. So we're hearing from both that they like the customer orientation and the ambiance there. So we've got a couple of people are telling us it's this kind of total customer experience that they enjoy. Lynx, do we have anyone else who raised their hand?
We have one more, Nicole Garcia. Nicole, I'm unmuting your mic, Nicole. Thanks, Noel.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, Nicole.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I like Starbucks because I think they are hiring the right people. I have left twice already my wallet and coin purse, but I'm able to get it back. So I think they are hiring good people there.
I am sure that what you just said, Nicole, would be music to Howard Schultz's ear. I'm sure he would love to hear how you've said that they are such good, honest employees.
Yes, I actually wrote them in their email, their customer service email, the international one. I gave them a comment on that they are hiring good people. It's really hard to find here in the Philippines honest individuals.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, well, thank you all for your input. What I would like us all to remember as we continue through our discussion this afternoon is what you have heard about what people have said about why they go to Starbucks and what they like about Starbucks. They like the people, they like the personalized service, and they like the ambiance. And let's see, as we go through our discussion this afternoon, if we can find out how this has occurred. How is it that Starbucks has been able to build a culture and an organization where they have these kind of people and have this kind of customer service. Now, I recognize that only a small percentage of you were able to read the case, but I'd still like to ask a question of those of you who have been able to read the case. And my question is basically related to experiences that Howard Schultz had in his youth that have shaped his personality. Now, some of you who have read the case, you may want to raise your hand to speak. If you are of the shy type, certainly feel free to use the chat function where you can type in an answer. But if we would love to hear from you, if you want to raise your hand. And I'm not seeing a brave soul among our 13% who read it. I'm going to offer one more bribe among the 13% who read it who wants a Starbucks gift coupon. If you raise your hand and speak up. Oh, still
Okay.
no takers. Right.
Yeah, none.
There's one. Maylene.
Maylene. All right, for a while, Maylene Benitez, I'm unmuting your microphone. Hi, good afternoon.
Yeah, it's Maylin. Hi, good afternoon.
Hi.
From what I've read, hello.
Yes, go
Okay,
on,
from what
Maylene.
I've read from the case, yeah, I think one experience that really shaped Schultz's personality is his being poor, and he saw that his father worked several jobs without, benefits. So I think that that's one of the experiences that really shaped his personality.
It certainly did, Maylene. You're absolutely right. We tend to look at leaders of businesses, CEOs who have been very successful, and many times we think they were born that way, but not the case. As a matter of fact, it's, at least in the U.S., it's rarely the case that they were born wealthy. And certainly in the case of Howard Schultz, he grew up rather poor. And you also mentioned his father. And his father is a key part of his personal story. But you're absolutely right, Maylene. He did grow up in poverty. His family lived in housing that was government housing that was built for poor people. It was in a part of New York City called Brooklyn. And another part of his story is his mother. And I gather you're. I'm sorry. The shortened version, then, Maylene.
Yeah, I think I did.
Okay. Okay. Well, one thing that is noted in the longer case is how important his mother was in shaping his personality and in giving him the values that he has. And he said they were so poor when he was growing up. They did not have much to live on other than his mother's values, which were to believe in America and believe that if you worked at it and got educated and so forth, you could be whatever you wanted to be. So those values, that value of believing in yourself and believing in America, were an important part of Howard's personality. So his mother was another important part. And then you mentioned his father, and mentioned that his father had worked hard but never did well. And then there's a very, very important part of the story of Howard Schultz, which is that his father was a delivery man, drove a truck and delivered things. And during the winter in New York City, he fell on ice and he broke his leg, so he could not work. And he had no health insurance, so there was no insurance to pay for the medical care on his leg. And also, his wife was 7 months pregnant, so she could not work. And they already had children. Now, in the Philippines, maybe an extended family would take care of him. We have less of that in the United States. So this was a very desperate situation. They were already poor, and the person earning the money in the family could not work because he had broken his leg. Now, we're going to come back to this part of the story when we return to talk about Starbucks, but that was a very important part of Howard Schultz's experience. His father also never had a high-paying job, and that's the obvious reason why they were poor. And Howard, when he was growing up, had bad feelings about his father because he felt like his father should have done better. Now, he changed those feelings when he grew older. He reframed his perspective. He saw it differently. He saw his father as actually having been honest and having a good work ethic and being dedicated to the family. But he had arguments with his father when he was growing up. Another important part of Howard's youth was sports. Now, this is more important in the U.S. than almost any other country. We are a very sports-oriented country. But one thing that a lot of people learn when they play team sports is leadership. They learn how to lead people on a team. And that also was an important part of Howard's youthful experience. But after he got a scholarship to college to play football, he pretty quickly broke his jaw, lost his college scholarship, and had to take out student loans. So here are some highlights from the early part of Howard Schultz's life. And I think we can see that there are a lot of big challenges here. Growing up in poverty, relying on his father to make a living, but his father could never get a great job because his father did not have a college education. His father breaking his leg and not being able to work, and there being no health insurance for them. And then Howard, when he thought that he had achieved something great by getting a football scholarship, in his first year he breaks his jaw and he loses his scholarship. So he has many challenges growing up. Now, one way to talk about challenges like that is that they are crucibles, or challenging, difficult experiences. And crucible comes from a term of using to heat up metals, to purify them. But in the heat is the challenge, is the difficulty. Now, we have all faced difficult experiences. One of the things that differentiates really good leaders is how they deal with those difficult experiences. Some people can internalize their experiences in a negative way. They develop resentments, they develop chips on their shoulders, they have real challenges in how they deal with the difficulties they have experienced in life. But other people, such as Howard Schultz, reframe these crucible experiences. So again, let me ask, among those of you who have read either the full case or the short version, how did these challenges that Howard Schultz experienced, how did they shape his motivations and values? Any thoughts?
Questions?
If you have them, send them other.
Yep. You can raise your hand and we can unmute your mic and let you talk directly to Tali and everyone.
And again, if you prefer, you can simply use the chat function. But we'd love to hear from you if you have thoughts.
All right.
About how these.
Darwin Moya said he has the drive to change his fate and become successful. Darwin, if you have a working microphone, let me know so we can open your mic instead if you want to elaborate on that.
So he's saying that
okay, he unmuted himself. Maybe he can't talk.
He's saying that. Okay.
So yes, he's saying that he has the drive
All right.
to change his fate and become successful.
All right, drive to change his fate and become successful. That's a nice summary of how these crucible experiences changed him.
Yep.
Anything else that we can say about his drive?
Tony Rose.
What drives him? What motivates him?
Yes. Okay. Tony Rose is another comment. Tony Rose, I can just unmute your mic and continue the discussion with your comment and probably the answer to Tali's recent question. Tony?
It was indicated here in the case that the key driver is his fear of failure because, of course, based on the enumerated items like what happened to his father, about the broken leg that his father cannot feed the family or support the family, what happened to him after getting a scholarship and eventually broke his jaw was he was developed that this kind of failure that he wants always to achieve success in everything he does. And at the same time, it is more of people orientation, like his father is hardworking as well as he working for the scholarship, but since they were not protected or they were not supported, they weren't able to get what they, like for example perks or health insurance. They were not supported by the organization. It was more of the people orientation of him, and eventually more on valuing human resource if ever that he will be joining an organization.
Okay, that's very good. And you're absolutely right that he says that prime motivation for him is a fear of failure, that it never leaves him. And I think we can understand that pretty easily. If you grow up poor and you're desperately poor and you have a situation where your father can't work because he's been hurt and mom is 7 months pregnant and where are we going to get food, that's a pretty difficult situation. So he does have this powerful motivator, which is a fear of failure. And we could also, and fear of failure, by the way, can be either a positive or a negative motivator. In his case, it has turned out to be a positive motivator. It gives him a lot of energy. He also learned certain values through his crucible experiences, and one was dignity and respect. He saw that his father did not get respect, even though he was a good man, because he did not have a college education. And because his father did not get respect, his father was not able to earn a good living. So Howard came away from that experience feeling like what he wanted to do was to make sure that people who work at Starbucks feel that they are respected and that they have dignity. And he also wants people who come into Starbucks stores to feel that they have dignity and that they are respected. Let's think about how that might get expressed in a Starbucks store, one of which is something you all have already mentioned, which is simply people remembering your name. If you are a frequent customer at Starbucks, they will remember your name. And that's a way of showing respect. My favorite story in that regard is I was staying in an apartment in Fort Bonifacio a year or two ago. I stayed there for 2 or 3 months, and then I left the Philippines for 3 or 4 months. I had been going to the Starbucks store that is near the Shell station that's close to St. Luke's Global City. I'd been going there regularly. They knew my name. They knew my drink. I did not go back for 3 or 4 months. I went back in. They hadn't seen me for months. And this fellow calls out my name, and he says, "Do you want your regular drink?" And he named it exactly. Exactly all of the ingredients I want and I don't want. So I turned to a girl, a woman also working at Starbucks, and I said, "Wow, he's got a great memory." And she said, "Oh yes, that's Tugig." And I thought, what? Tugig? What is this, a Filipino nickname? What is this? Tugig. She said, "No, it's Tugig." I said, "Please again?" She said, "Yes, 2 gig, as in 2 gigabytes of memory. That's his nickname, 2 gig, 2 gigabytes of memory." I think there are a lot of 2 gigs at Starbucks, because I'm amazed at the memory of these people. But it's all a part of trying to show respect to customers, and obviously it works for a number of us. Another value that Howard learned that's mentioned in the case is humility. And one aspect of humility that's mentioned in the case is, even though he's multi-millionaire right now, his wife still tells him to take out the garbage. So there's always, and he appreciates that, because she says he's not going to allow him to get full of himself. And then another value is his belief that people should be self-defined as opposed to the way the rest of the world defines you. So one thing he did, he had a very good job getting out of college, working for a very well-known company, Xerox, but he said his heart was not in it. And so he decided, rather than let Xerox define him, he was going to define himself. And that led to his path to Starbucks. So there are some examples of how his crucible experience shaped his motivations and values. Another very important part of how his youth shaped who he was, and how, very importantly, how he built Starbucks, was that experience of his father breaking his leg and not having health insurance. Howard decided that anybody who worked at at least in the U.S., anybody who worked at a Starbucks store for at least 20 hours a week would get health insurance. Now, in the U.S., this is extraordinary. because most operations like a Starbucks are doing just the opposite. They are finding ways to eliminate benefits such as health insurance. And if they have them, usually it's only if you work 40 hours a week. But at Starbucks, you work minimum of 20 hours, you can have health insurance. It's a tremendous benefit, and health insurance is very expensive in the U.S. But all of that comes from that experience, that crucible experience that Howard had growing up with his father getting injured. And the important thing is, rather than Howard growing up poor and growing up resentful and bitter and so forth, he reframed his experience in positive ways so that he created an experience in his Starbucks stores that was made for a better world than he grew up in. A world of dignity and respect, and a world where employers care very much about their employees. And it makes quite a difference on the part of the employees because they feel like they are being treated with respect. Therefore, they're going to treat the customers with respect. And that's part of what creates the special Starbucks culture. And culture and values are the two things that keep getting repeated in the case. Culture and values, culture and values, culture and values. And Howard believes strongly that if you have the right values, treat your employees very well, that will get reflected in how the customers experience Starbucks. All right, so that's a bit about Crucible experiences. What about leadership principles? Again, for those of you who have read either the short or the long version of the case, what leadership principles did you notice Howard exhibiting? Any thoughts?
Anyone can share. Let me know via chat or raise your hand. Okay, earlier Mary Ann commented while we wait for their answers, she sort of summarized and said that I think Howard Schultz demonstrated through his life events that he can transcend beyond his difficult situations and use them to improve his circumstance. Thank you, Mary Ann, for that insight. Okay, so to answer your question now, Tali, the president from PMAP, Ms. Grace Sorongon, answered that he believed that power must be shared. Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Grace.
Well, he certainly did.
Yes, and Tony
Yes,
Rose.
thank you, Grace.
Tony Rose commented again the humility in leadership. Yes, thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Tony.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, sorry, I mentioned that it was Miss Grace, but it's again Darwin Moya because they're both using the same account there at PMAP. Okay, thank you, Darwin, for that correction. Okay, anyone else? Okay, I think they're becoming more shy. Okay.
All right, well, let's just reflect for a minute about some of the leadership principles Howard follows. As with any great leader, he certainly has a vision of where he wants to take his company, vision of how he wants to build it. He's very, very keen on instilling trust and hope. Trust and hope are maybe above all others the key ingredients of good leadership. You have to give people hope and they have to trust you. And that's certainly an objective of Howard's. As I think it was Darwin mentioned, He definitely wants to empower others. He doesn't believe that he should be #1 person on the stage all the time, that others, he has to share the stage with other people. He believes he needs to cultivate leadership, in other words, to help other people within Starbucks be a leader. He's very big on openness, being open about himself, being open about what is transparent about what's going on in Starbucks. And interestingly, he talks about vulnerability. Now, this is relatively new in leadership thinking, is the notion that a leader can show some vulnerability. We tend to think that leaders should not show any of their weaknesses or vulnerabilities at all. But he has been open about his own vulnerability, and this has helped people to see him as being very human, as somebody that they can relate to. So he has turned that into a strength. He's saying that there definitely needs to be meaning and purpose. People want to work for something other than just money. They want to be a part of something bigger in life. He's also very big on betting on people, on hiring those who have values that are similar to his. He sees this as key. And then there's this notion of community that he's trying so hard to build there in the Starbucks stores, is a sense that as a customer, you're a part of a community. You're not just a customer. You're not just there to hand over your money. You're a part of a community. And we had several of our respondents mention ambiance as something that they like about Starbucks. And that ambiance, part of it all is this sense of community that Starbucks generates. And finally, diversity. One thing about growing up poor in New York City was being in government housing. There were people from many different cultural and ethnic backgrounds. So Howard learned to get along with a diversity of people, and he's continued to believe that that is important, diversity is important, and it's important to respect the diversity of backgrounds and peoples. Well, I want to move for a moment here to some research by a Harvard professor. You can see his name at the very bottom of your screen, Bill George. He's a professor at Harvard Business School. Before becoming a professor, he was a very successful CEO. He was the CEO of a medical equipment company that makes heart pacemakers. The company name is Medtronics. And while Bill George was CEO of that company, the market value of Medtronics rose from $1 billion to $60 billion. So he was very successful. Then he decided that he wanted to give back to society, and one way he was going to do that was to be a Harvard professor, and he was very concerned about leadership. He saw companies get into deep trouble, and he saw leaders get into deep trouble, and he thought time and again, he thought this doesn't have anything to do with intelligence, at least in terms of intellectual intelligence. What it had to do with was emotional intelligence. He said people had lost sight of what the true values ought to be. So he has been a big advocate of what he calls authentic leadership, and he's defined it as you see it on your screen. Authentic leaders align people. They get people together. They get people to work together. So they align people around shared mission and values, and we've talked a lot about values here as they relate to Howard Schultz and Starbucks, and they empower people to lead. So that was all a part of, as noted, Howard believes in sharing the leadership, and then very importantly, while serving all stakeholders. In other words, he sees leadership as service. He said the reason that certain leaders got into trouble, and if you think about companies like Enron and WorldCom and Tyco and more recently Lehman Brothers, AIG, the banks that got into trouble during the Great Recession, he's saying the reason they got into trouble is because those leaders were not serving stakeholders. Instead, they were serving themselves. He's saying great leaders look beyond selfishness. They have a purpose that is beyond themselves. And if you have a purpose beyond yourself, you need to serve all stakeholders. And then collaboration, particularly in the kind of complex world we're in, is a very important part of authentic leadership. So the qualities of authentic leaders are, first of all, as I said, a deep sense of purpose about their leadership, and a purpose that involves serving others and society. It involves being true to your core values. We've emphasized throughout our discussion here of Howard Schultz about him being true about how important values are to him and how important it is that people who work for Starbucks be true to those values. Integrity is something everybody talks about, but you can't leave it out. It's critical to authentic leadership. Now here's one: leading with hearts, not just the mind. That there needs to be an emotional component to it. People will go the extra distance for you if they are emotionally committed, much more so than if you just have the right idea. Here's something: leaders who are committed to building enduring organizations, not just building something for making quick money, but building something that's going to last. Steve Jobs of Apple was asked by his biographer shortly before he died what he thought his greatest creation was, and the biographer thought Steve might mention, well, it was the iPad or the iPhone. Instead, he said Apple. He said Apple, the company, the organization. That's what he was most proud of. And there he was, working even when he was quite ill to ensure that Apple remained an enduring organization. Authentic leaders also see themselves as servants of their stakeholders. Again, rather than this being about me, great leaders see their leadership as being one of service. Leaders also definitely build connected relationships. They are very much into networking, building the right relationships, and they're very disciplined individuals. So that gives you a sense as to what this Harvard professor, Bill George, has come up with as far as authentic leadership. Hopefully you can see how Howard Schultz himself manifests many, if not all, of these qualities of an authentic leader. And let's look at what the results are of him having had that kind of authentic leadership. At the time of the case, for those of you who were able to read it, Starbucks had revenues of $6.4 billion. We had a little bit over 10,000 stores. And now let's get the update. In 2012, by then, revenues had basically doubled. And they've got 18,000 stores, including 195 here in the Philippines. And elsewhere in Asia, another 800 in China and 975 in Japan. That's something to have that many stores in tea-drinking China and Japan. And finally, I want to leave you with a comment that Howard Schultz made on a very recent visit to the Philippines. He was here to acknowledge that the winner of a design competition for the best design for a new Starbucks store was won by a Starbucks store here in the Philippines. So he was here to acknowledge the winner, but he also made a comment that hopefully will warm the hearts of all of you. There it is. We have Starbucks in 62 countries. But the culture, values, and passion of Filipinos wearing the green apron of Starbucks are the best we have ever seen. So there you are. He's saying out of 62 countries, Filipinos are the best. So congratulations. Congratulations to the Pinoy spirit. All right, I will stop there. That's what I wanted to convey to you about Starbucks. Links, I'll leave a moment here in case anyone wants to either chat or using the audio function raise their hand and ask any questions or make any comments.
All right, thank you so much, Tali. Everyone, this is your turn now to ask questions to Tali, and let's hear his answers to your questions. And if you have comments also, feel free to raise that. Remember, you can do the opening your mic, or you can do the chat box function of this webinar tool. Just feel free to do that, okay? All right, we have one from Ivy Epino. How did he view his business competitors?
Well, Howard, yes, Howard believes that Starbucks is in a very, very competitive industry, and one of his observations has been, look, I mean, basically anybody can copy the products that we sell. So the only way we really can differentiate ourselves is with our culture. And that's why he's put so much emphasis on hiring the right people at Starbucks, put so much emphasis on making sure that everyone who works for Starbucks understands what the values are. Somebody once asked him, Howard, how is it that you train all these people, or how is it that all the people who work for Starbucks smile? And he said, we only hire people who smile. So he's put a primary emphasis. He says the only way we can really compete, and he acknowledges Starbucks is a discretionary purchase, meaning it's not something you have to have. It's also not cheap. So he understands that he has to provide something exceptional. And yes, a lot of people like the coffee or the tea or whatever Starbucks sells, but yes, the product has to be first rate. But the thing that really distinguishes Starbucks from its competitors is the culture, is the people. It is the Starbucks employees remembering your name. It's 2 gig remembering my drink there in Fort Bonifacio. And it's the ambiance of the stores, that sense of community that they're able to create at Starbucks. Any other questions, Links?
Yes, we have one here who's raising her hand. Rita, were you the one raising your hand earlier? But so I think you put it down, but I'm just wondering if you're up to it again. I'm unmuting your mic. Hello?
Yes.
Hi, Rita.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yes. Yes, my question is, how are you able to sustain the motivation of your employees to consistently deliver excellent service to your customers?
That's a great question. I mean, basically the way they are doing it in Starbucks is, for one thing, they've got a clear sense of purpose and mission that they continue to convey to people, that they repeat to people, that they make sure that the people they hire can be motivated by. Another way that you can continue to keep people motivated, and one thing they do at Starbucks, is training. If you hire the right people, they are going to value training. And that's something that's going to keep them there. Third thing they do at Starbucks is they offer stock options. At least they certainly do in the U.S., and that is a motivator for people in the U.S. So they can see that they're a part of something greater, but they can also see how it is benefiting them personally. Again, and I can also say in the U.S., having the health insurance is a tremendous motivator. That's a much bigger deal. My understanding is it's maybe a much bigger deal in the U.S. than it is here in the Philippines. But we are more reliant, dependent on ourselves in the U.S. than I think Filipinos are. Somebody gets ill here, maybe family members will take care of them. For better or for worse, less so in the U.S. So that health insurance is a big motivator. But basically, it's first off giving people a sense that they are part of something bigger than themselves, a purpose that can motivate them, continuing to remind people that that's what we are about, but very importantly, making sure that you walk your talk, that if you say that's your purpose, you say those are your values, then you have to live those values. The CEO has to live them. Everybody in the company has to live them. There cannot be hypocrisy. There cannot be saying one thing and doing something else. So those are some of the key ways that they have done it at Starbucks, in addition to things like training, giving people advancement opportunities, stock options, and so forth.
All right. Thank you so
Other
much.
questions, please.
Thank you so much, Tali. Rita, hope that completed everything. Okay, so we have 3 to 4 questions here. Tali, are you okay to answer that? Time check, it's 4:04 on my clock. If it's okay with you, we can proceed with answering the question.
I tell you, Ling, I will answer the 4 questions that are up, and then I think in the interests of time we should close it off. We told people we would run this from 3 to 4, so let's answer the 4 questions, and then we will close off. We'll close off the questions after that.
Thank you so much, Tali, for indulging us. Okay, so we have one here from Verona Villahar. Well, it's actually a comment, but we'd love to hear it, Verona. That is a heartwarming message. It will surely motivate more Starbucks staff here in the Philippines. Okay, the question from Maria Celeste Armas is, how does Starbucks measure their brand equity?
That's a good question, and I don't have an immediate answer on that. I'm sure that they certainly measure things such as individual store performance. But I can tell you one thing: Starbucks ran into trouble a few years ago, and that was when Howard Schultz, he had given up a senior position in the company. He came back in, and the big thing was he felt like they had wandered away from their core values. So one thing certainly about brand equity in his mind is, are we living our values, and is that reflected in how people perceive Starbucks? Because if Starbucks had become, as many public companies in the U.S. do, they had become too concerned with doing things to please Wall Street, doing things to please investors, such as opening lots of new stores so it looks good when you talk to Wall Street. And he said things had gotten out of line. He said we're not into opening stores because we want to please Wall Street. Instead, we have to be true to our values, and we can only open stores if we have the right people that we can hire for those stores, people who have embraced our values, and we're not going to open stores if that's not the case. And they ended up closing a lot of stores at that point. They felt that they had gone too far the other direction. So certainly one way to measure brand equity is how are customers experiencing us, and if it's not the community experience we want, if it's not the dignity and respect feeling that we want, then that diminishes our brand equity. And if all we're doing is acting in certain ways to try and please Wall Street, that is not helping our brand equity. Our brand equity has to be reflected in how our customers perceive us, and that in turn is caused by how we are who we are hiring to work in Starbucks stores, how we are treating them, whether or not they buy into our values and our vision and so forth. So that, from the evidence that I have seen, that's how Howard Schultz would measure Starbucks brand equity.
All right, thank you again, Tali. For the second question, would be from Aldwin Villafuerte. To everyone, if you'll notice, I'm also sending the questions via chat, so you'll get the chance to read it in case you didn't catch me as I read it, okay? So here's a question from Aldwin Villafuerte. Tali, were there any instance that during the U.S. recession affected the motivation of the employees, and how did they manage that kind of situation?
I'm sure that there were situations, particularly when they closed certain stores, and I'm sure that was a very difficult decision for Howard to make. What he did do, though, was, for those who remained, he was absolutely firm about returning to their values. He kept coming back to that. We have to be true to our values. We have to be true to our culture. And he had to have the faith that, although there would be moments there during the Great Recession when there might be resentments, particularly among employees who were laid off from Starbucks, he had to know, he had the faith that if they returned to their values, returned to their core purpose, that longer term, that morale of the company overall would improve, which in fact is what has happened. It's in fact what has happened. Oh. That's one of the things I admire the most about it. He is so zeroed in on values, on making sure they walk their talk, that they live those values, and not growing at a rate beyond which they can ensure that those values are going to be lived by employees in their thousands, in every single one of their thousands and thousands of stores.
All right, thank you, Tali. Moving on to the third last among the 4 questions. The third would be from Maria Carolina Viernes, sending that via chat to everyone. I also believe in sharing the power with the people, but how do you address people abusing that power? If you'd like to.
Well, that's a very good. Yeah, that's a very good question. You have to be very clear with them that that's unacceptable. Now, in the U.S., certainly we're pretty direct in the U.S. We would just tell people, look, this is totally unacceptable behavior. If it happens again, you're gone. If it happens again, you're fired. Or if it's particularly bad, they're fired on the spot. Now, the culture here is maybe kinder, but nonetheless, companies, I've been impressed with companies here that if the rules are very, very clear up front, can't come to people afterwards and say, well, you didn't follow the rules if you haven't been clear about them. But if the rules are clear up front, And if it's very clear up front that there are consequences for violating those values or those rules, and then following it up with concrete action, if in fact they are violated, that does a lot to stop people from abusing their power. I mean, basically, you got to have rules. First off, you have to hire people that you have every sense will follow the rules. Then those who don't, be very clear that there are consequences for that, and then help people find a more appropriate place to work if they continue to abuse the power.
All right. Thank you again, Tali. Okay, down to our last question among the four. It's a bit long, but I'm sending that via chat also. Here you go. So I admire the expansion of Starbucks, particularly in stores. Recently, we've been seeing some more interesting products in our countries and even other malls selling their products. I have a question. Will Starbucks be more aggressive with online or e-commerce? Will that affect the brand experience of the customers since their baristas are their selling points?
You would think so. That if they go more online and there's less of a personal connection there, that could affect things. I'm sure that would be of concern to people like Howard Schultz, where the personal touch is so terribly important to the Starbucks brand and what it's about and what keeps drawing people back. It can be a risky approach, but evidently one that they are willing to take, and in believing in the strength of the product that they have to sell. So we'll see. We'll see how it does for them.
Okay, thank you so much again, Tali. You have a few slides more, as mentioned earlier by.
No, links. I'm stopping there with the slides.
All right.
And I simply want to remind you, I think we've got a couple of winners of the Starbucks coupons.
Yes,
Make sure that
I've got their names.
No, okay. All right. Yep. Okay, good. Otherwise, I will thank you all very much. It's been a pleasure being with you, and I'll turn it back over to you then, Links.
Okay, thank you so much again, Tali. Down to my slides also. Sorry. I'm not sure if it's playing from your end, guys. I think my slide froze a little bit. Okay, just right. Okay. Twinkle, if you can help me, I cannot see my slides. All right, I got this. Okay, I'm transferring the presentation rights to myself again. All right. Okay, since Twinkle, can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Okay, if you can make me the presenter again. Okay, how about this?
Yep, I am seeing your screen now.
Okay, thank you so much again,
How
Tali.
about you guys? Can you click on the hand icon if you can see screen?
Okay, it's back to my screen now. Okay, again, thank you so much, Tali, for this insightful afternoon that you have given us, for sharing those, for sharing the case and giving your insights, and for all the participants, of course, who participated well and for attending this session. Okay, hold on. Before you click that exit to leave webinar, let me give you this quick closing note. There will be an evaluation form sent to you via email. Of course, with the emails that you have given us as when you registered to this session. But before we finally close this session, we'd like to thank you once again. So to do that, let's have a virtual clap of hands or applause for Tali and everyone who are all here this afternoon. Okay, can you raise your hand? And to all the organizers and panelists, you can unmute your mic and let's give this clap for everyone for being here. Okay, hey, I'm seeing clap, 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 lots of clap, clap. And thank you for raising your hands, everyone. Again, thank you for being here. To exit this session, click File, Exit, Leave Webinar. Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.
It's still on. It's still on.